When I was 9 years old, I fed cereal flakes to a frog and it died. Then I went on a period of time where I fed cereal flakes to all little animals. Squirrels can live through it, chipmunks can live through it. Anything that lives half in and out of water dies, and I don't understand why. When I was 10, I once walked by my mother sleeping, and I snuck in the room and I put a lemon in her mouth.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dave. Thanks for joining Bob and I for our podcast, Thriving in Dystopia. And even though we always try and be professionals, sometimes we swear. So just know that going in.
Welcome to the big show, Bob. How are you?
Doing good, Dave. Excited for our recording. It is just always a blessing to just find the time to connect and do the podcast. You are finishing your first week, right, of teaching. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I want to hear about it. Tell me, how did it go?
Yeah, it was super successful. I felt my anxiety was down. That's, there's a book out there. It's not really a book so much as like a TED Talk, or a bunch of TED Talks that are looped together that Audible's selling as a book. Like I listened to it this right before school started. It's by Brene Brown, and it's called The Power of Vulnerability, I believe. It's good. I mean, she's good in general, as we all know. It's just like fun, like ear candy for you for the most part. But she talks about like the 10 pillars of wholehearted living. And the one I decided that fit me the most for this year was accepting quietness and stillness and letting go of anxiety, because I feel like that's the thing that I need to work on the most. The other 9, I think I'm a master of, so no need to worry about those. Just kidding. But yeah, anyway, I just do feel like my anxiety level's down. I feel a little more in control, and like looking out over the course of this year, I know that I'll be able to use so much of what I did last year, this year. But really and I know that I shouldn't be doing this week after week 1, but really what excites me is like next year, I'm going to be able to reuse everything, because everything will be in both languages and I'll be able to seamlessly go through them. I feel like this is it. Like this is happening. So I think, I will give you a couple highlights. One of my favorite things to do is lead icebreaker type games. I told the other teachers, my team, that I would get all the 4th graders out on the big field and I would do some icebreakers. I did a birthday lineup, which is a classic, but it was ambitious to get 50 plus 4th graders to line up in birthday order. How long do you think it took them, Bob?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Man, that would be a dream. It was 27 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so cool to see all the like leaders that were trying to step up and be like, September birthdays, come over here, and then the people that were like, what is like, I need to like spaz out and throw pine cones at my buddy, and it was just definitely just clear that like communication was not awesome, which makes sense because like these kids haven't been in a cohort this big since like the middle of 2nd grade, which is crazy to think about, And then we did this game called Mar y Tierra, where they jump back and forth. Like there's a line down the middle. And if I say Mar, you have to jump to the seaside. And then if I say Tierra, you jump to the land and you go back and forth. And I try and mess you up, like Tierra, Mar, Tierra, Mar, Mar, and stay. And it's just fun to just point and just laugh and watch all the fun stuff that happens.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like such good energy. What would you say the overall vibe was at the school coming back? Was there good energy all around, or everyone feeling collectively coming back to campus after the summer in such times?
Yeah, I would say in general, like my class is pretty high energy and positive. But it's just so much nervous energy from everybody, new faces, new friends, new teachers, new classrooms, new expectations, COVID protocol, which we were like kind of easing up on at the end of last year, is like back in full force, distancing and masks and hand washing. But some of the things that like we found out aren't like a huge trigger, like being outside without a mask is kind of nice that we're able to have like kids outside without a mask. Cause I feel like that's a really nice way to take a break. Whereas last year during recess, they had to wear masks, you know? I think in general, it's really high. I'm working with some pretty new teachers, different teachers from last year. So we're trying to like figure out each other and see how we're going to make it work. But I think my school, like the culture of the school in general is like really good. I don't think that there's been a lot of like, basically what I'm trying to say is parents support us. I know that like the school district of Fort Collins, which is called Pooter School District, had like a lot of parents at the school board meeting protesting the wearing of masks, you know, but there are no parents in my school that have said anything, you know, and the parents generally support the teachers that are trying to do this hard work, you know, rather than trying to like oppose us or like give mixed messaging, you know, they're just like, this is what you got to do, you know? And I kind of feel like that's just what you got to do sometimes. Sometimes you just got to wear a mask to be healthy. And friend of the show, Mike Bishop, came over yesterday and he said that basically at this point, everyone's either going to get vaccinated or get Delta, you know, that's basically what it comes down to. So,
or both.
Yeah. Or probably both at some point. Yeah.
But I guess I should say the vaccine, of course, helps to prevent getting it quite a bit. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. As don't want any of that anti-vax lingo, Bob.
Exactly. No, I'm so pro-vax. Just while I have this for a second, I just saw this great poster. It's like a social justice poster. And it says like wearing masks is an act of love. And that's so grounding, you know, like you're saying, you're talking about the mask. I mean, some people are like extremely against masks, but so every time I mask up, I'm like, this is an act of love, you know? So even if I'm outside, even if it's because I still hesitate, you know, sometimes when I put on a mask and the other person's not wearing a mask, there's a little bit of like, do they think I'm like dissing them or something like that? But you and I have talked about this on the show, but I just wanted to mention that poster. Maybe I can link to the poster in the show notes.
Well, I got to get another link that you got to get the show notes people on. There's a woman, her name's Aviva Ram, and she is kind of like a guru of alternative medicine, but she's not like Western medicine. You know what I mean? And she thinks that both have their benefits, and there's been times where she's opposed some vaccines, but she thinks that we should look at each vaccine, rather than just like yes to vaccines or no to vaccines. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Like case by case basis.
Yeah, exactly. She's like a researcher and she did a lot of research on the COVID vaccine, and she came out with a post maybe on her podcast, or maybe I saw a video of it. So it could have been like a Twitter that she had posted, but, it was really good to just watch her break down like a lot of the myths that are happening and why those aren't correct, but also like what are some of the facts and like where we are at, you know, and like, you know, because everybody's in a little bit different situation. Like some people are immunocompromised. What's that word? Immunocompromised. And, but also like those, yeah, like it's also like Delta's going to fuck you up too if you're immunocomp. Oh gosh. Anyways, she just kind of went through it, and it was good information for me to hear. So I'm just going to recommend that to the old Thriving crew.
Great. Yeah, I'll link to that as well, for sure.
And of course, I found out about that through Julie, you know. But yeah, first week was real good, Bob. Had one little fight on the soccer field that I had to spend about 40 minutes debriefing. So we didn't get to a lesson that I had planned called Genius Hours, which was kind of a shame. Instead, we just talked about how to practice kindness and on the soccer pitch.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah.
I guess that one's for our other podcast.
It's for the old Beyond X and O's. So that's it, Bob. That's where I'm at. How are you doing?
Yeah, I feel good. I don't know what exactly I can say. I am, 6 weeks until I have to go back to school to teach, and feeling like just sort of midsummer. And I did go to a wedding yesterday. My wife's friend got married in Santa Cruz, and it was the first wedding that I've been to since your wedding.
Damn.
Back in 2018.
Yeah, it's coming up on 3 years in a few days here, bub.
Yeah. There's a time in my life where it felt like a lot of my friends and family were getting married, couple weddings every year. And then all of a sudden, and of course, COVID has a lot to do with it. 3 years and I haven't been to a wedding. So
wow,
it felt fun. I really enjoy that friend, and just weddings are interesting places. I appreciated going, and I guess, slowly but surely I'm thinking about putting my lesson plans together for teaching. And I do have a lot of excitement, but nervousness of me going back to the classroom. Mm-hmm. Because UCSC, I believe it's pretty clear to me they were prepping for a world of non-Delta COVID when they made decisions around bringing back students. And then, Delta hits, but we're UCSC is like a slow moving Titanic. Once they make the decision, it's probably going to happen. I mean, they could pull the brakes and do something different, but, I think going back to the classroom, I feel a lot less confident, than I did at the beginning of the summer. So I'm sure other students are. And so I'm just thinking about how to make my classroom as accessible as possible for a lot of students who are immunocompromised and will be reluctant to go back into the classroom. And I can understand that.
Yeah. Am I right, Bob? Do you get this feeling that it's really not about sanitizing surfaces as much as it is about wearing masks and washing hands and not touching our face?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I read a good article on The Atlantic about that at some point, calling it something like sanitizing theater,
right.
It's more about businesses wanted to show that they were sanitizing everything to bring people back. And scientists thought it was more connected to surfaces early on, and I think you still could get it if it was a really, if I coughed and then wiped a surface and you touch that, I think you could get it, but it's so much aerosol based, so coming out of mouth to mouth. Masks are just the best thing against coronavirus. I guess masks and vaccines we have great armor, but we have a society that is so politicized that, we're in a mess.
That's true. And I did want to mention too, I'm pretty sure that our editor Nadir got married yesterday.
Oh yeah. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that. I don't know much about that, but the fact that I was at a wedding yesterday and Nadir probably got married yesterday. Do you know more?
Nah, just that he's getting married. I mean, don't really know the guy that well, and we're supposed to have him on the show. So, if you got a question for Nadir, send it our way. And I know that some of our more faithful listeners will have to send them a Google form, but maybe Bob could link a Google form in the show notes or something now, Bob. Absolutely.
And while I have you, I've been wanting to say this about talking with Nadir, and because we want to have him on the show. And so, he gave me a little bit of a bio. And so I could give that to the listeners right now.
Do it.
Nadir is 24 years old and grew up in a small town in Bosnia called Maglaj. It has about 2,000 people living there, and it's probably just about 500 people living in the city and the rest outside of it. He says that, as you expect, it's small town living, and it's on the boring side for a kid like him who wants to play in a band and play shows. So that's, pushed him towards music and doing stuff with music, which brought him to computer and creative work on computers. He is also going to school to be a chemical technologist and work with pulp and paper mill outside of town. It's a gigantic factory that's bigger than the town itself. But there are no jobs offering there, usually for a chemical technologist, interestingly enough. He got his first, he moved to Sarajevo and got his first editing job there. And sometimes he makes a little money with music as well. he always wanted to work somewhere where he doesn't have to work too much, but have a steady income so he can work on his craft of making music. And so, yeah, I appreciate Nadir for sending that. There's a lot of interesting aspects there, especially for, most of our listeners are in the US, but just, thinking about, Nadir surviving or thriving in a different part of the overall global dystopia. So if listeners have any questions, send them our way and then we can ask Nadir on the show.
Yeah. And it's been hard to organize it just because sometimes our shows come together pretty haphazard these days.
Yep. Yeah. With us being so busy.
A shoestring type of podcast. Well, Bob, I just wanted to, one of my thoughts that's been running through my head this week was, just how like things affect other things. And as we're getting into another world as possible and thinking about that, and I got thinking about the Zapatistas. With that, I don't think we've ever exclusively like dedicated some time to the Occupy movement, which was really formative more in your life than anybody's. Than mine.
Me and David Graeber,
Yeah.
Very informative.
Yeah. But I don't know. So, but I was like, where are we? Like, what happened with Occupy? Because I guess I wanted to start with some of the history and then kind of like a little bit of a retrospective, because I believe it was about 10 years ago. Am I wrong? It was like September of 2011.
I'm pretty sure it hit October 4th, but that might have been the Santa Cruz Occupy. So you have to look at my dates as well. And I think you're right that the New York one started in September and it was definitely 2011. So 10 years exactly, Dave. So yeah, I love this idea.
Yeah, I guess I'll give a quick brief intro and then I'm curious to hear you expand on it. As I know, being the layman of the show, Occupy sort of came out of the housing collapse I think it was 2008, the housing bubble when it burst, and then the bailouts of 2009, and then sort of like those sent shockwaves around the country. And then it got to a point where, 2011 happens and people are like, what's the square called where it happened, Bob?
Zuccotti Park.
Zuccotti Park.
Or I think they renamed it Liberty Square, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like it came out of nowhere almost, right? Like, and I know that the influences were, strongly with the economic collapse of the 2000s, but with any movement, you look back in history as to where you're seeing this pop up. And a big thing, this takes place in economics more than anything else. So it's like, it's definitely influenced by like, I probably am thinking Seattle and 99 and the NAFTA, WTO type of stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And I think the roots are also very much in the queer activism of ACT UP in the 1980s and 90s.
Oh yeah, sure. Because it is a New York based movement more than anything. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious if you want to add on to that and give us a little more context.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I think everything you said is right on. And it is a really important historical moment and movement that was, really good for this season, because Another World is Possible was definitely at the core of what Occupy was about. And I agree with you that, looking at the history of it, with the housing crisis and the recession of 2008, I remember a lot of commentary and commentators were saying, at least on the left, were like, and where is the people out on the streets protesting against like the banks getting bailed out? And, the fact that capitalism seemed to be only strengthening itself, even though it was the core creator of that problem. So it was interesting that it took so long, but Occupy was definitely a response to all that. And the other thing that was interesting about it was that it like exploded. It went from New York to like 1,000 different cities in the United States having, and these were like big occupies, you know, or like hundreds of people that were taking over city public spaces. And it's really important to also situate Occupy within the resistance in the Middle East around the Arab Spring that started in Tunisia and Egypt. Egypt, you know, overthrew their government, and actually a number of other countries overthrew their government. And it was like a really exciting moment that maybe progressive governments would take over in the Middle East. Then also that sprung up like these things called the indignados and in Spain, and these like plaza takeovers in Spain and Italy and parts of Europe. And then that sort of influenced Occupy. So yeah, I remember like when we were in Occupy, we were like really curious and always paying attention to how things were going in the Middle East and whatnot. So yeah. And, you know, I think some of the Occupies lasted maybe 6 months. The one in Santa Cruz lasted like 4 months. The winter was really hard, but also like the police repression and, you know, cities trying to crush it from the outside. And then the internal dynamics were always really challenging as well, of like, you know, people from very different backgrounds with different political, you know, theories or political ideologies, I guess. It was always difficult with a consensus model to like figure out what to do. So, but for me, yeah, I was there a lot in Santa Cruz and went up to Occupy Oakland a lot. And it was very transformative for me as a activist and social movements, you know, theorist or someone who teaches social movements. And yeah, I guess I would just say like a big moment was in Oakland when there was a general strike one day planned in like November, and tens of thousands, like 80,000 people took the streets and shut down the port of Oakland. And there's so much power and, you know, power to the people in the people's movement. So it felt like we could do anything, or like a different way forward would be possible. And we were closer to some kind of revolutionary change than any other point in my lifetime, I would say. Maybe, you know, last summer, that certainly feels like it. I'm not sure like which one was closer to radical changes, but yeah. And we could talk about the, like, what did Occupy influence in a bit, but that'd be my intro on Occupy. And yeah, curious to hear where you'd like to take this conversation, Dave.
Yeah, I'm ready to go down because I don't think we need to stay in the past too long. I am curious I don't know the answer to this, but do you know what the last Occupy to be shut down was? Like, it certainly wasn't Wall Street.
Yeah, I don't really know. There's probably like some that just had different relationships with their cities that were able to last longer. But I think with the bigger ones, like basically the New York one and the Oakland one, when those ones were shut down, those were like the big engines of the movement.
Yeah, those were the ones that were doing work, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I got to walk upstairs as we're chatting just because my computer's dying. So you'll get a little background noise, listeners. Yeah, I bet there's probably still some like Occupy, like Bar Harbor or something that's still going on where people get together and drink a beer on like Wednesdays or something like that, you know?
Yeah, there probably is. Yeah, something like that did keep on going in Santa Cruz, I remember.
Yeah. But the engine, like you said, certainly did get shut down. And I think that in and of itself is like where it went. But like with any movement, like nothing gets shut down forever, right? It just gets transformed, especially with these powerful people type movements. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. So I agree. Like the culture changes and the ideas. Yeah, it just always, it's like a river, you know, you can dam it, but it'll flow in other places.
Yeah. So to me, like, and I've done no research. This is just me sitting in bed watching a Cleveland Guardians game, thinking about this. And I was like, I I kind of feel like the energy from there went to 2 different places and maybe 3. Like it went to Standing Rock pretty heavily. And I feel like those movements, like Standing Rock was very tied to Occupy Wall Street and the water protectors of the Sioux. But yeah, and then I also feel like the BLM movement, you know, is like tied back to that. The start of that in Ferguson, I'd say, is the real like push for Black Lives Matter of the first generation, I would say. And I kind of feel like that was, in some ways, it was in opposition, because I feel like Standing Rock was like, hey, this is our land and we're occupying our land and you need to get the fuck out of here. Like, you don't have, like, capitalism can't be here, you know? But I feel like what Black Lives Matter is asking is like, hey, like, you know, yes, we all are the 99%, but like this, like, you know, 40 to 60% of the 99% are people that are getting targeted by cops. And this other like 40% are people that are like doing fine and aren't like really down to like change their lives. So I feel like the BLM movement sort of was addressing like some of the problems that you're talking about, of like how there's these like different voices. And it's like, if like Occupy really was like a uniting force in a lot of ways, but it's like, if you're going to ignore like the issues of systematic racism in the United States, you're not going to get very far, you know? And I feel like that's why these 2 energies went those 2 ways. Yeah. And I don't know. I guess I feel like, you know, some of the energy went to the like pride movement in the US and like trans rights in general, but also like queer rights and what's been happening over the last 10 years with that. Those are like the 3 energies that I feel like it really directed towards. Can I mention a 4th real quick? I just feel like Bernie Sanders is just like tied to the Occupy movement. He was like the hero of the like mainstream, that like without Occupy, there is no Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is so anti-bank in general. Yeah, but that's where I've felt. And I'm just curious, that's my Mount Rushmore of where Occupy's energies went.
The big 4. Yeah. No, I think if you could bottle Occupy, it would look like Bernie Sanders. Like Bernie Sanders is like, or like the mascot. Bernie's not a mascot, but you know, like Bernie is the representation.
He has some mascot ability.
That's right. The Occupy Bernies. Go get them, squad. Yeah, that is the biggest through line, I think, for sure. And I agree with you that there's definitely some things that Occupy did to bring people together to help create more movement behind Black Lives Matter and Standing Rock. But those 2 movements definitely were also critiques of Occupy. And
right.
I mean, Standing Rock for sure, like the language of Occupy was very colonial and had quite a distaste to a lot of indigenous activists, and you know, the empire occupies, and the fact that people at Occupy wouldn't talk about, or just weren't talking about decolonizing, what decolonizing would mean, that showed that Occupy is sort of like a false starter or something. Like the framework is not the right framework. And then BLM for the same things, that like the 99% framework, also important, but not the right framework, because it homogenizes the 99% and, you know, pretends as if, like, for example, me and my social conditions are the same as someone in a prison, or like people of color living in like Flint, like, and so you have to be able to bring people together, but not erase those key differences. And so I think social movements have done a great job in the last 10 years of like no longer erasing those differences, while still carrying on the torch of Occupy in the sense of like having a critique of wealth inequality, of some of the big institutions of capitalism. So those are like things that Occupy I still am very happy, or grateful for, that it pushed those things to more people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious to see where the energies will go towards. I feel like where we were in 10 years ago and where I see some of the kids are right now, I just feel like there is a lot of hope in that, living in another world being possible. And just like living in the moment, because I feel like these social movements that we've brought up are like pushing the world into a much better place. And yeah, I just feel like it's fun to look back at these things and how they interconnect to each other,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what would a world look like if Occupy never happened? Is another way to look at it. It showed that like bringing people together is just always really important. And in times of pandemic, that's so hard to do. But there's so much power in like bringing people together. I think for Occupy, we were sitting ducks, and the city and the police could come after us, and eventually take us down. And so Black Lives Matter has been so much more mobile, and that I think has been good for BLM. So that learning, I think, was directly, or at least partially, connected to the ways that like when you're stationary, the cops can just destroy you, literally. But yeah, Occupy, that it happened. If it had never happened, that would be so brutal to take all those blows of the bailouts and then say like, keep it coming, keep the blows coming, or something like that. Standing up is just so crucial, because it does give hope. And yeah, I'm curious, my students, you got me going, Dave, and I'm going to bring up Occupy when I teach in the fall. And I want to know what my students know about Occupy.
Yeah. Sweet, Bob. Yeah. They were, if they're like 18 to 21, they were like 8 to 10-year-olds. They were like my kids.
Yep.
I want to say one final thing is we decided to start a book club, and Bob doesn't know about this, but there's an author. Her name is Eula Biss. I don't know much about her. Mike Bishop recommended me this, and we got talking about capitalism yesterday when we were hanging out, me, Dan, and Mike. And she wrote a book in 2020 called Having and Being Had. And it sort of is a critique of capitalism. And, I think her quote is like, my life is split up into two parts. The life before I owned an oven and the life after. So it talks a little bit about like where we are in the capitalist world. And I think too that also got me thinking about Occupy. So get your Eula Biss going, and let's get it, Bob.
Perfect. That's a good place to go. Yeah. Well, thank you for this topic, Dave. I loved it. And I think we'll probably be seeing some more retrospectives out there when we come, into September and October. But yeah, we were the first, I think.
Right on, Bob. Well, I got a quick fix for you, Bob. Okay.
Yep.
So I got a class pet this year. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
I have a bearded dragon.
Oh, a BD.
A BD. It's a lizard from Australia. Know very little about it, but me and Mom went and got it today.
Wow.
Yeah. I got a little tiny grant, and I was able to procure the dragon, which was pretty fun. Anyways, what would you do, Bob? I need to have the heat lamp on during the day, and I leave the classroom at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. some days. So I can like turn it on when I get there at 8 a.m. That seems fine. But what should I do about turning off the light? Should I go back to school every day? What do you got for me for a quick fix? Getting my bearded dragon as much UVB light as possible.
So let me understand it. So on a typical weekday, you can turn it on at 8, keep it on all day till you leave
at like
5.
Yep.
And are you thinking like maybe it needs even more time than that in a given day?
Yeah, I think it'd be good. On also the weekends, like that seems like a lot. So I've just been sitting here brainstorming like how to, because I don't really want to go in and turn it on. But I don't want to leave it on all day because I don't want to fuck with the cycle. It just seems like I don't also want to take home the bearded dragon. But I mean, there's cloudy days out there on the outback, right? So,
yep.
But I guess I want to get into a good cycle. Just curious should I neglect it, some of the UVB light, and just give it 10 hours a day while I'm there at school?
I think we need to know a little bit more. I think we need you to call a vet or to do a little bit more research to know like exactly how much they need. And if like having certain days where they don't have it, like what are the effects of that? Then a second quick fix is like, does your school have like a custodian who could help you with that?
Oh yeah, that's a possibility. I could ask my night custodian. She's there till 10 p.m. It seems like a bit of a big ask.
Maybe, I mean, there's no harm in asking, right?
Right.
And maybe you could do something for them.
Oh yeah. That seems like a pretty good idea, Bob. It doesn't quite solve my weekend problem, but I'm okay to be there at least for the first weekends. I also got to make sure the dragon gets fed on the weekend, So got to give the dragon the crickets and the leafy greens. I
think for this situation, don't be afraid to ask people for support, like the custodian staff or others who just like, I don't know what your school looks like, but that might be there on the weekends. That's true. Yep. Nice, Bob. Let's do it with community power yet again. What kind of pie? Community pie. No, occupy. Damn it. You missed it, Bob. All right, Nadir, cut the show here. Just kidding. That was a good one. I'll give the coordinates. All right. Thriving in Dystopia at gmail.com. No, that's not right. Thrivingindystopia.com. Dave Peachtree at gmail.com. Thriving_in_dystopia on Instagram. bmaze19 on Twitter. Dave Peachtree on TikTok. And, you can just send us a letter to the corner of Euclid and, Marina in Santa Monica. I think my bearded dragon has awoke over here. So yeah. We'll see you next time. Love you, Bob. Thanks for that. Love you, Dave.
What's up, driving crew? Bob and Dave want to take a second to thank you for lending them your ears. They also want to thank the artists for making everything a little more beautiful. The intro song is In Heaven by Drake Stafford. Our audio is edited by the consummate and dexterous Nadir Chayech. Web design by Chris the Mixer Sawyer. And of course, visual art is by the prolific and enigmatic Joe Shine. Our new outro song is Bach's Goldberg Variations, Variato 3-1 by Kimiko Ishizaka. Thanks for listening.